All right, joining me now is Horace Cooper, co-chair of Project 21, and Michael Schellenberger, author of San Francisco, Why Progressives Ruin Cities. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Horace, I want to come to you first. What is your reaction to what Kevin Corke just told us?
Well, I'm outraged. This tells us all that we need to know about how the wokesters, when they're handling prosecution, how they're not putting the victims as their priority. A child was assaulted by this individual. That ought to be where the conversation begins and the conversation ends. Now we know from a cold case record that this person actually is involved perhaps in the death of another person, and as the report indicated, had a lengthy arrest record. We shouldn't be so concerned about hurting the feelings of these predators. We ought to be making sure they're put in a place where they can never attack again. Shame on Gascon. Shame on these woke prosecutors, because they don't realize the overwhelming number of the victims that are harmed are the kinds of people that don't have the wherewithal to protect themselves or to protect their children.
Michael, you're a California guy, and to hear Horace's point, you have Gascon, who is more concerned about a DA or assistant DA who's offending a trans child molester than he is about a actual trans child molester.
Well, that's right. I mean, it appears in this case the prosecutor who was fired by Gascon was fired as retribution for pointing out the fact that the suspect actually bragged of having tricked people into treating him as a trans woman. And so there's a real question here about whether this is truly somebody who identifies as trans or whether this is just a scam to get into a woman's prison. This may seem like an obscure issue, but in fact, the Prime Minister of Scotland just resigned over the last week because she had allowed prisoners to self-identify into whichever gender they wanted, and in one case they sent a male convict into a woman's prison, and it set off an uproar in the country. So it's both the kind of marriage of the two worst worlds. One is a kind of radical wokeism as it relates to criminal justice, and the other one is as a kind of radical gender ideology, which allows anybody to claim to be whatever gender they want, even in the case of prisoners facing a possibility of going to a woman's prison.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. All right, Horace, let's move to St. Louis because...
But Sean,
go ahead.
I just want to say this. We are giving attention to this felon when we should make the central focus on the victims.
Yes.
And my biggest criticism of these Soros-funded prosecutors is that they act as a publicly funded defense attorney for those that prey on the rest of the innocent. We need to turn back and hold these bad actors accountable. The more punishment, the more penalty, the greater it is, the fewer bad actors you'll see.
Listen, I used to prosecute these cases as a DA, and these victims of child sexual assault, you ruin lives for a lifetime. It's a lifetime sentence for the victims.
Absolutely.
It's horrible. All right, I want to get you guys' take on this because we're speaking of woke Soros-backed prosecutors. Missouri Attorney General has moved to fire the city's prosecutor, Kim Gardner, after a teenager lost both of her legs in a crash. That police says was caused by a robbery suspect who had violated bond conditions. Michael, this seems like a proactive decision to finally go after these corrupt prosecutors by state officials. What do you say?
I think it's a very interesting thing. In fact, what we see both in Los Angeles and in St. Louis is you see people resisting the woke prosecution agenda speaking out for the first time. In the case of Missouri, the AG is attempting to remove the district attorney from office. What that district attorney has done is the same thing that radically progressive prosecutors have done in San Francisco and Los Angeles, which is basically to let people out, not require that people be held in jail for alleged crimes. And the result is repeat offenses. I mean, the one in St. Louis, the guy in question had violated the electronic monitoring 50 times before the accident. So, I mean, you have this just repeat offensive, and you have these district attorneys that are basically acting like defense attorneys rather than as prosecutors. And so, look, these are also cities, I should mention, that are lacking hundreds of police officers. Crime is absolutely out of control. Homicides remain at record levels. There needs to be serious prosecution of serious crimes.
But Horace, we now see the impacts of weak prosecutors. Crime explodes in communities, but these prosecutors keep getting elected. What's happening with voters that would elect these George Soros-backed DAs and completely destroy their communities? Explain that to me.
We're seeing fundraising explode, especially when Soros-backed organizations and think tanks are able to pour in the kinds of resources that turn a DA race into something like a congressional race. Shame on the left, who used to claim that when you put money into politics, that it ruined things, and they've set back. Now, there's this second problem of these wokesters, and that is that rich people and elites and the well-to-do, they move to other communities. Right. They can hire security. But the very people that rely most on the criminal justice system are the ones that lose when these Soros prosecutors get their way.
So true. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.